Hello, everyone. Hope y'all are doing well. Here we are at week 3. We're going to be talking about suicide and homicide in this section. I'm looking at this. It says chapters 5 and 6, but I'm breaking it down into 2 separate videos. So this is just going to be chapter 5. So sorry about that. They're just so long. The chapters are so big that I'm just breaking it up that way. All right, let's pray. And we'll start. Father, I thank you for my class. I pray you bless them. I pray you be with all of us. I pray that we'll be able to learn and grow together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. This is an interesting and challenging and exciting section, chapter. Here are just some basic statistics. It does appear that we are increasing. The rate of suicide is increasing. And by the way, this is the book goes into detail explaining this, but it's really kind of complicated sounding. But it's basically per capita. So in other words, one could say, but would be wrong. Oh, well, we just have more suicides because the population is increasing. No, it is increasing, taking that into account. It's called per capita. I don't think the textbook uses that term. That's my term, but it's still a term. It has moved from 11th leading cause of death to the 10th leading cause of death. And when you look at this age breakdown, it's crazy to think that 25 to 34, it is the second leading cause of death, which is just, whew, you gotta be kidding. Even 15 to 24 is the third leading cause of death. I mean, you're talking about stroke, heart attack, accidental death, automobile accidents. Teenagers are high and young adults are high for automobile accidents and accidental death. Accidental deaths are things like a bunch of teenagers say, hey, let's jump off the bridge, and the water's too shallow and somebody dies. Or just, jump in with their bicycle and land and break their neck. I mean, there's just all kinds of crazy things that kids do, as y'all all well know. I'm not a big, you won't see me on the corner with my megaphone standing upside down on my milk crate, screaming, repent, the end is near. However, the end is near. I really believe that the Bible tells us that things are going to get worse and not better. And I think we're seeing that in many, many, many arenas of our life. So these are just some kind of general concepts, I guess you'd call it. Obviously, the primary victim is the person that killed themselves, that died. But there are, and that's a term, primary victim. Like, so when you're talking about suicide in the counseling world, primary victim is the person that actually killed themselves. Secondary victims are those that are the survivors. And I don't know if y'all, if you're really young, you may not get this or have heard this much. It's really a term that's been around for a long time, but they will say okay, step out of suicide for a minute. Let's just say someone dies. So let's say I died. They would say at my funeral, or possibly in a write-up in the paper if there was one. I'm kind of a small fish, but they would say something like, Brad was survived by his wife Annie and his 4 children, blah blah blah, and maybe, maybe my son-in-law or something, right? So survived by. So this is what we mean when we say secondary victims. This is not to be confused with someone who has attempted suicide and survived it, right? So they're still the primary victim because there's the one that tried to kill themselves. They are often in crisis. Guys, I'm telling you what, I have had people tell me stories that just will rock your world. And some of you may have experienced this. Some of you may have had stories like this. And by the way, this may be a class that that stirs some emotion in some of you. The class in general, but certainly this particular talk. You may have experienced a suicide in your family or a friend or a relative. You may have been the one to find the person. And depending on how that person killed themselves is going to depend on how traumatized you were. And so I had a client, I've had several clients where this has been the case. I've had clients tell me that they were cleaning the they were cleaning the brain splatters off the wall, which you should never do. There are people who do that when the police are called. There's companies that did clean up. Um, I've had clients tell me that they thought that their brother was asleep on the couch, or their son, and they went to wake him up, and they were cold and stiff, and there was a hole in their head and blood everywhere. So when someone actually finds the person that has killed themselves, another one that can be pretty traumatic is they're hanging from a rope somewhere. Um, so it's extremely disheartening and painful and traumatizing. This is not just it's so very different. Grieving for this is so very different from just death, like someone died, especially of old age. It's kind of expected, you know. It doesn't mean it's not painful, but it's definitely different. And it's been said that, and I believe it's true, and I don't know if the textbook says this, but death of a child is particularly probably one of the most painful deaths you can experience. So if a parent finds their child having blown their brains out, and by the way, I'm just say it. So I'm sorry if, I mean, you know, this is the people are going to sit in your office and say stuff. And so you have to be tough enough to handle that, and be okay with that. I don't beat around the bush. I mean, it is what it is. And so if a parent finds their child in that state, they're going to be messed up. They're going to be traumatized to some degree. Sorry, messed up. You know, how's that for a clinical term, right? Um, there's going to be some serious grieving and even complicated grief. And we talk about complicated grief in a little bit. Another term for complicated grief is complicated bereavement. It's just the exact same thing. It's just different terms used in different settings. Uh, there is an incredibly increased um, risk of suicide for the person that for the secondary victims, the survivors. Um, Not only is there an increased risk of suicide, there's an actual increase in suicides. There's an increase in depression and anxiety as well. My daughter is 16 years old. She goes to Flower Mound High School, and about 2 weeks ago, a kid killed themselves, and it was a kid that was in Laura Beth's grade. And Sunday, another kid killed themselves, and so she was talking with me about it and processing it, and she didn't know either one of them, so that helped. It wasn't all that traumatic for her. But I told her, I said, you know, oftentimes when someone kills themselves in a school, someone else will shortly thereafter. And I said, and sometimes it can be a string of suicides. Sometimes they call it copycat suicide. Um, and that has been studied greatly by psychologists and psychiatrists over the years. And there's many explanations to that. One is it's almost a permission giving, right? So if I'm let's say I'm a 16-year-old and I'm a junior in high school and I'm depressed and I'm thinking about suicide and someone else in my class commits suicide, it's like, oh, well, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it. And so boom, there they go. Um, uh, it is very important. Again, some of you are going to be pastors, so forgive me. It's important for counselors to be competent in this area. It's important for counselors and pastors to be competent in this area. Probably the biggest mistake we make when dealing with these situations is talking too much and saying really just stupid, painful stuff for people, like, oh, it was just God's will, or like, no, hogwash. Like, no, it wasn't. God's will is for you to thrive and live and love Him and serve Him and honor Him, not for you to kill yourself. It was not God's will, period. Sorry, wrong theology. It was not God's will. So trying to explain it away, trying to explain the emotion away, just sit with people, let them feel what they feel, and walk through this with them. The textbook, I don't think it spends a lot of time on this, but I'm going to spend a teeny bit of time on it. Guys tend to kill themselves in much more violent ways than girls do. I had a client who was in the psychiatric hospital one time, and I saw him 3, 4, 5 days after he did this. And he was 15 years old. And he was angry at his father, a lot of anger at his father over the years built up. And he was in an argument with his dad. He had a 9mm in his hand. He ran out of the house. His dad yelling at him. He stood in the middle of the street in front of his dad and put the 9mm directly to his chest and pulled the trigger. Fell backwards on the ground, blood everywhere. Um, it amazingly, uh, beyond amazingly, it went all the way through him, by the way. It wouldn't necessarily, depending on what type of bullet it was, but the bullet went all the way through, so it entered in and left out his back. Um, it hit nothing vital. Just, I'm looking at this kid, I'm going, dude, you are so supposed to be here. And he goes, yeah, I'm kind of figuring that out. I'm like, yeah, I think so. So you might want to like really kind of work it out with God because you are supposed to be here. Um, yeah, some loss of blood, ER call, hospital, checked out, stitched up front, stitched up back, sent to the psychiatric hospital once he recovered enough. It's just crazy. I was like, wow. He had some good conversations and actually some good laughs as well over that. I mean, it's not funny, but it's like, dude, really? Like, wow, you so should be dead right now. So should be dead right now. But boys tend to be more violent. They will cut themselves or use a gun and be much more successful, or maybe jump off of a very tall bridge or something that's very violent, and they will be more successful. Girls will more commonly take pills. They are less likely to shoot themselves. That gap is narrowing as time goes by. Um, I think culturally, girls are exposed to more violence than they used to be. I think girls were protected from that years ago, but not as much anymore. Okay, so three categories that we look at: prevention, intervention, and postvention. I love how you get PhD behind your name. You get to make up words, right? So postvention. I wrote postvention in, and my computer turned it red. Underlined it red. It's like, yeah, no such word. And I'm like going, yeah, I know. I know. There's not. You're right. A little spell check. But it is now. So specialized word. Love it. So prevention is public awareness, teaching people how to respond properly. And for example, you don't tell someone, "Well, fine. You know what? You're threatening suicide. I'm tired of hearing about it. Go kill yourself." Never, 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 never say that to anybody. Well, but they're just trying to get attention. Yeah, it's part of it. Sure is. And not getting attention. Uh, they'll up the ante. They'll increase the intensity, oftentimes, which means a first attempt. Um, Teaching and training and equipping governmental leaders, educational institutions, that would include schools as well as colleges and universities, community agencies, and faith-based organizations. So helping people understand what to do when someone says they're suicidal or threatens suicide can be helpful. Even the general public, of course, a professional counselor knows what to do. Hopefully, a pastor knows what to do. But that the community can know to some degree. I've had kids come to me and said, this kid told me they were thinking about killing themselves. What should I do? I'm like, you like, hello, school counselor, like now, like what the heck now? Like this is yeah. You tell, oh, but they told me in confidence and they'll be mad at me, and yeah, they will be mad at you. Yes, they will be. But they'll be alive and they might be dead, and that's on your head if you don't say something. They're like, oh, yeah, well, yes, I've said that to people. Do you really want that on your head? And they're like, yeah, I see what you mean. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. Um, then intervention is the actual services that are given to an at-risk population, and hopefully that's before the person actually kills themselves, right? So it's counseling, it's going to see that they may go to see their pastor, and you're intervening. And then postvention is working with people after the fact, working through their grief and their trauma that they've experienced, um, and working with those who have attempted but not completed suicide. Remembering that as far as risk factors, if they have attempted once, the chances of them attempting again are high. And eventually, somewhere down that road, they will become successful. I've worked with people that have many, many, many attempts under their belt, which is kind of a scary place to be. So suicide risk assessment, table 5.3 in your textbook. This is, to me, at some level, I would say this suffices, right? If you cover this well, you're good, right? So, but here's what I want you to understand. There may be another type of suicide risk assessment either here in the textbook or mentioned elsewhere that you like better, or you can do what's called eclectic, an integration of different risk assessments. These can be done verbally and or on paper. And there are, you hand them a piece of paper and a pen, say, here, fill this out, right? I mean, do you plan on killing yourself? Yes. Do you have an actual plan? Yes. Is the plan feasible? Yes. Oh, we're in trouble already, and all we did is number one, plan, right? But this is a conversation you have with a person that, and never be afraid to ask someone if they're suicidal. And if someone's just super depressed, or if a family member or a friend has killed themselves, you really want to ask them, are you doing okay? Like I know you're hurting, I know you're struggling, and you've shared that with me, and I get that, but are you okay? And yeah, okay, so any suicidal thoughts? And that people are not offended. I remember being in school, sitting where y'all are sitting and going, wait, so you're just gonna straight up ask somebody, are you planning on killing yourself? I'm like, yeah, I am. I do it all the time, and it's not a big deal, right? It's like, oh yeah. Um, Sometimes they're like, oh, no, 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 yeah, I'm depressed, but I'm not. I'm good. Not even, no thoughts of killing myself. I'm not. No, 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 no. I'm good. I don't want to leave the earth. No, I'm good. I'm going to believe that. I mean, okay, cool. You might get, I'm like, okay, what does mean, right? I'm going to prod and probe. I'm not going to let them get away with it. One of the things I was taught as a counselor is you're going to be like like an investigator. So you're like an investigator. So if someone says something, you don't just go, okay, cool, yeah, whatever. No, no, no. They say something vague. You follow up on that. They may say, well, not like immediately. Like, well, what do you mean not immediately? Because that may mean uh, my girlfriend's thinking about breaking up with me, and if she breaks up with me, I'm going to kill myself. Or, my parents are thinking about getting a divorce, and when they get a divorce, if they get a divorce, I'm killing myself. So not immediately, but yeah, I'm planning on it. It's like, whoa, time out, right? So you want to explore that with them, and people usually will tell you pretty openly. It's pretty amazing. So what do you mean by that? Like, so when something happens, then you might, or what? I mean, you really want to be pretty specific on that with them. Then you're asking them, do they have a method? Okay, so you're planning on killing yourself. What method would you use? And you're looking for feasibility and realisticness. If it's 10-year-old saying, "Oh yeah, we'll get a gun and kill myself." Okay, so do you know anybody has a gun? Does your daddy have a gun? Does your grandpa have a gun? Does your uncle have a gun? Blah blah blah. Nobody has a gun. There ain't no guns in this world, right? He's as far as he can touch. Okay, not a realistic method. Specificity. How specific are they? Um, yeah, I'm going to leave your office. I'm going to drive home. I'm going to get my pistol. I'm going to go out in the country. I'm going to sit in my car alone. I'm going to turn on my favorite AC/DC song and I am going to blow my brains out. Okay, yeah, Houston, we have a problem. That is pretty doggone specific. Um, Vagueness makes it less of a threat. Availability of means, we really already talked about that. What is the method? I kind of got my crisscrossed on that. Sorry. Method would be pills or just straight up pills, knife, gun, right? So then availability of means is do you have access to this stuff? Sorry, I got those two mixed up. And then when is important. Again, it may be when grandpa dies, or when blah blah blah, or when it could be a when. That's either concrete and specific. Some people will do it like on important anniversary dates. I'm going to do it on the day my mom died, the date of her death. Um, the date of our divorce, whatever it might be. I'm gonna, so when are you planning on killing yourself? And remember, you're assessing, right? So what is the chance of intervention? Let's say you're on the phone with them. Are there people around? Are they is what's the level of possibility that there's some type of intervention can happen? I mean, I've been like, okay, we need to get your family members involved in this. Let's talk. Let's talk to you. Let's get your family on the line and let's talk, right? I mean, let's work through this. I had a lady call me up one time, a nurse with an X-Acto knife, and nurses are very lethal because they know how to kill themselves. They know they're going to snip that artery, maybe two arteries, bleed out in 5 minutes or less. They're dead. I mean, it's just simple, easy, straightforward. bada bing, bada boom, we're done. So nurses are very, very lethal, very, 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 very dangerous. If a nurse tells you they're going to kill themselves, and they, don't say, oh, all you've got is a little X-Acto knife. Yeah, no, no, that will work. That will do it very, very, very effectively. Um, she called me and was in um, her car alone, had driven way off somewhere, and was on a payphone and would not tell me where she was. And I actually got on another phone, got my wife on another phone. We traced the call. The police showed up. We got her to the psychiatric hospital. Got her. Got her. Got her admitted. I'm laughing because I got one of the best cussing outs I ever got. Was she was mad at me. Woo! She was mad. Well, I know. It's all right. She thanked me later. Literally, she thanked me later. It's hilarious. Yeah, that saying, oh, they'll thank you later. Yeah, they will. She did. I've had that many times. It's kind of funny. I just smile and go, it's okay. Good. Yes, you're welcome. I'm glad you're alive. Is there any kind of level of intoxication, alcohol or drugs? That's important. People are much more unstable, obviously, and can be impulsive and just do something crazy if they're intoxicated. Ambivalence about killing themselves. Well, I really want to live. I really want to be there for my kids and grandkids, and I really, okay, well then there's some ambivalence, as opposed to, yeah, well, you know what, my kids are fine. To heck with them. My wife, I don't care. I'm just done. Forget it. There's no ambivalence. I'm done. I'm dying. Ready. I'm checking out. I can't do it anymore. And then acute versus chronic. So chronic is long term, ongoing, ongoing, ongoing. Lots of suicidal thoughts over the years. Again, that can intensify, get worse, and end up being a problem. Um, let's see, something else I was going to say about one of these. It'll come to me later. All right. Um, continuing with risk assessment. Um, the textbook, I like the way the textbook lays this out. So suicidal capability is evidenced by, right? So as you see the evidence, right? You're looking for evidence. Back to you're being a little investigator, right? If they've tried before, they'll try again and eventually be successful. Oftentimes, if they have had exposure to someone else committing suicide, close friend or acquaintance or family member, um, have they been harming themselves in any way? Self-mutilation, cutting. That people hurt themselves in all kinds of weird ways. I've heard of people. I just never mind. I don't even need to repeat it. But the more and the more severe that is, the more likely they are to kill themselves. Also, if they have been hurtful, physically hurtful to others, violent towards others. Uh, do they have the means? Again, some of this is a repeat, but I like the way that it's capability evidenced by, right? So that's what you're looking for. Intoxication levels, mood changes and loss of reality. Yes, psychosis, psychotic. When I say loss of reality, I'm talking about psychotic. I am Jesus, and as soon as class is over, we are all going to Israel. I'm going to walk, and you are following me. We're going to go. Yeehaw! Right. So that's psychosis. Like, okay, that's a chance, but there's a risk factor there. Um, mood changes, highs, lows, quick, volatile kind of stuff. So we're looking for there. Being agitated severely, rage, increased levels of anxiety, depression, aggression, decreased levels of sleep, those kinds of things. And then these two slides these sections were back to back. So you have capability is evidenced by, and then intent is reflected by. An attempt in progress. Man, I've had people call me and tell me they have taken a bunch of pills. I'm like, great. So drinking, yeah, I've drank a whole bunch of alcohol, and what'd you take? I don't, well, something. They're trying to read the bottle. I don't know, bunch of something. How many did you take? I don't know, a handful. Like, oh man, I'm dialing 911, dude, so quick, it'll make your head spin when that kind of stuff happens. Been there, done that. Let's see. I've not lost anybody, by the way, if you're wondering that. I've never lost anybody, a client to suicide. Um, let's see. Do you know the method? Have they communicated the method? Is it viable? A plan with a method, known method, then that's intent there probably is intent, right? And then preparation. Boy, anytime like, oh yeah, I'm giving stuff away. I'm like, whoa, why are you giving stuff away? Like, hey, what's up with that? Giving finalizing thing, but finalizing your will. My wife and I are working on our will right now. Kids are like joking around with all kind of stuff on there. We're like, hey, wait, we're not dead yet. We're like, I want the house, I want the car. Stop. I love it. We have fun. All right, so um, getting their business affairs intact, buying a gun, loading the gun, reloading the gun, loading it and unloading it, right? Practicing kind of stuff, counting pills, stated intent to die. I had a student in a class. He was in one of my classes. I say I've never lost a person to suicide. I've never lost a client to suicide. I have lost a student. He was in my class, and one of my classes, and it was an upper level class, and there's only like 8 people in the class. It was really kind of an intimate setting, and we went through all these processes, and we was probably 3 weeks into a 15-week semester, and this kid came back from the didn't come back. Sorry, we had a weekend, and the kid had literally done all of their assignments for my class for the entire year and turned them all in. This is that preparation, right? He rented a hotel. He bought a gun. He went and bought a gun, purchased a gun, and he rented a hotel room. It was. This is going to sound strange, but it was polite of him to not do it on campus. I'm just going to say it was nice of him not to do it on the dorm room. I that may sound strange to you, but I did appreciate that. I'm like, well, okay, yeah. Um, and he blew his brains out. And I'm telling you what, man, it rocked our world. My students and I in that class, it was just like, dude, he sat right there, he interacted with us, he talked with us. He was a little bit socially withdrawn. He was a little bit socially awkward. He did not really connect with people. He didn't do a real good job with being apart and belonging, which is part of the problem. Family, severely jacked up family situation. Just really, really, really sad, which by the way is a risk factor. Jacked up family situation. um, okay, so in dealing with helping people stay alive, if you're a pastor or a counselor, the, I shared this with a friend of mine, and he said, a counselor, a friend of mine, about this no harm contract that the field has moved away from the terminology of no harm contract to the terminology of safety plan, because safety plan is more accurate and specific than a no harm contract. They're virtually identically the same in terms of what you do. It's the same thing. But and I'm like, okay, so hang on a second. Let me get this down. Because we call it a safety plan, they're going to stay alive. But if we call it a no harm contract, they're going to kill themselves. Come on. My friend said, boy, I bet you that was some big old honking committee that spent all these, he said, I bet that was hours and hours and hours and hours and hours worth of of talk just to come up with that one. And I just laughed. I said, dude, you know it. Don't you know it was? I'm looking for the name of the committee. And sure enough, I mean, it was right there in the textbook. It's like, this was the blah, 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 blah committee. Um, Oops, I'm back here on homicide. I need to get to, I don't think that's table 5.4. Maybe it is. Yep, it sure is. So it is are you ready for this? It is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, NSPL, Standards Training and Practices Committee. Like, oh boy, wouldn't you have loved to have been a part of that committee? Wow, okay, sorry, I digress. All right, so elements of a safety plan are And this the textbook gives more detail than this than what I've got here. So um, I have many times talked with people and had permission to talk with their family and said, all right, we got to get all the guns out of the house, right? Got to get and the barn and the the people will like, oh, I don't have any guns in my house. Okay, shed, barn, you know, uh, get rid of all the guns, right? All the guns that you have access to, get rid of them. Get rid of the ammunition as well. And that's just can be helpful. And for some people, listen, I don't know, I don't know where you come from, but I'm a Texas boy, and you know, they, you ain't taking my gun and my ammo, right? I mean, that's just kind of culturally, this can be a challenge, okay? And some of you are like, well, of course, yeah, just get rid of the gun. I'm like, yeah, you might meet just a wee tad bit of resistance. Good old boy ain't giving up his gun too terribly easily. So your question is, well, then what do you do? Well, you coax them, you work with them, you like this is temporary. Let's just get you safe. Got to keep you alive. Those kinds of things. Have people fill their prescriptions, RX's prescription, weekly instead of monthly. Well, what does that have to do with anything? You got less amount of pills to kill yourself with, right? So if you fill it weekly, once a day it's 7 pills. Twice a day it's 14 pills. Three times a day it's 21 pills. Most pills are not 3 times a day, right? So much less likelihood of me killing myself with 10 pills than it is 40 pills, right? So that's the deal there. Have them take their dog on a walk, play in the park, in the dog park, call a friend, eat 3 meals a day. So some of this is just kind of recreational and self-care, basic self-care kind of stuff. Drink non-alcoholic drinks. Listen, if someone's suicidal, they do not need to be drinking alcohol of any kind ever, period. Probably should stay away from caffeine. And by the way, in the textbook, it says non-alcoholic and caffeine. Um, Avoid lonely times so that people, you're working with people, you're talking with them. Okay, so when are you most lonely? Well, between these times and this times I tend to be alone and I get lonely. Okay, well, let's fill that with something, right? Some kind of event. um, and then spend the night at someone's house, a friend's house or a family member's house. And this is just that continued. Go to your bipolar support group or your depression support group or your divorce support group, whatever is your issue. uh, Call your sponsor and go to a meeting. If you're if it's an addiction type deal, you maybe a part of a Christian addiction. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Y'all know, maybe you're sitting there trying to help me out right now, right? You're like, yeah, I know. I want to say CL, but I don't know if that's right, but I don't think it is. But anyway, uh, make sure they have the suicide hotline number, and this is kind of the big dog of that. There's other ones, but this is a big, powerful one. Go to your primary care physician, psychiatrist, or go to the ER. And there have been, yeah, I mean, that's like, yeah, go to the ER or go straight to a psychiatric hospital and they will help you out. All right, outpatient management. So let me go through a quick, a brief layout of the levels of intensity of care, right? So the most intense level of care is a psychiatric hospital. A psychiatric hospital is a locked facility. There are locked doors everywhere. When that door you're in there, the door locks, you're done. You're not leaving until you're discharged by the doctor. Very challenging for people. That is the greatest level of intervention. It's also difficult and painful, but it can be very good for people. It can keep people alive. You're observed 24 hours a day. You're watched. The mental health tech goes and checks on you in your room all night every 15 minutes. So can you kill yourself in between those 15 minutes? Yeah, but you don't really have anything to kill yourself with, generally speaking. They take your shoelaces and your belt. You may have watched some movies that help you understand this and see this. So that's the most intense level. The next is what we call IOP, intensive outpatient programming, or PHP, partial hospitalization programming. Those are the same thing, but one might be 2 hours a day and one might be 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day, but you go home at night, right? So it's like being in a psychiatric hospital. It's usually at the psychiatric hospital, physically at that facility, and then you go home in the evening. Um, and then you go down to residential treatment centers, which are usually for you live there, but it's not a locked door. You can leave, but if you leave, you're kicked out of the program. You're like done. Those are usually like eating disorders or substance abuse disorders, and not just straight depression or anxiety. Then the next level would be your counsel, like, well, seeing a physician for uh, psychotropic medications, so antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, whatever, antipsychotic medication. You would hopefully see a psychiatrist for that, or your that's a primary care physician, not primary car. My car needs a physician right now, let me tell you. In fact, my car is in the shop, and it's fixing to cost me a buttload of money. And I'm like, oh man, but that's all right. It's old, but it's paid for. It's a Suburban, and it's like, all right, sorry, off. Wow. Sometimes you can increase the sessions to 2 or 3 times a week. If you're a pastor, you may say to someone, maybe you ought to see your client, your counselor 2 or 3 times a week. I've done that before in private practice. When I was in private practice, it worked. And I call the insurance company and say, look, well, I'm fixing to hospitalize this person, but if you guys don't want to pay for hospitalization and you want to up it to 3 times a week for a couple of weeks, and let me see if I can get them stabilized, I think we're probably good. I've got a safety plan in place. I've got family members I'm talking to. I think they're going to be okay. But I may be calling you back saying, yeah, they're not doing well. We got to get them inpatient. And they're usually like thankful. They're like, okay, that's cool. We'll try that route. Thank you, because I'm saving them money, and I'll really trust me. All they care about is money, and that sounds cynical, but it's pretty ugly in the secular world out there when it comes to money. Utilize formal and informal support groups. What I mean by formal is like, okay, we're going to have you go to a depression support group that's like we're led by a counselor at a facility in a church, whatever it might be. Informal support groups is let's get you calling your people, right? Your family, your friends, and get them and tell them, reach out. I need help. I'm hurting. I'm struggling. I just need you to pray for me. I need to sit down and have coffee with you every once in a while, once a week or something for a couple of months. I'm like, okay. Create a plan for daily activity. Sometimes people have a hard time. They want to just stay in bed all day. So it's kind of a get up, eat breakfast, take a shower. Just basic stuff, literally. It's very behavioral, but can be helpful. Run some errands, take a dog for a walk, go for a walk yourself, but I don't feel like doing any of this. I know that's why we're doing it, because you don't feel like it and you got to, or you're going to die. You're going to kill yourself. And you're telling me you're suicidal. And you're sitting in with your curtains pulled and you're dark inside and your covers over your head and you're not answering your phone, you're not drinking water, you're not eating. You got to do some stuff. Or we're going to hospitalize you. Or you got to go to hospital. Just talk to me, work with me. I'm pretty, I don't play around. I mean, it's not a threat. It's just, this is where we're at. And that's where you're at. I want you to live more than you want you to live. And that's okay. But let's, work with me here. And they usually do. Um, Anytime someone is transitioning from one level of care to another, so I went through the levels of care on purpose for you earlier. So anytime they're transitioning either direction from one level of care to another, it is a vulnerable time. So if they're inpatient, if they've been inpatient for more than 3 days, they've probably gotten comfortable inpatient. I always kidded with my clients. I'm like, dude, you fought me coming in. You fought me to the tooth and nail to not, I don't need this. I don't want to go in the hospital. I know you don't, but you do need it. You need to trust me, and I'm sorry, but you just do. So we get them admitted, and it's 5 days later, it's time for them to leave, and they're like, I don't even want to go, man. This has been good. I'm like, yeah, I feel so safe here. Yeah, I know, but you're good. It's okay. Come see me on the outside and keep going, but you'll be all right. So those are transitioning times, or times that they are vulnerable. And then certainly there's the occasional involuntary hospitalization um, that you may be involved in, and that is different states have different laws. It's not an easily done thing. People say, "Oh, I'm going to have that person committed." Like, shut up, whatever. No, you're not. You don't have the power to. It's just abuse and crazy talk at that point. It takes a mental health warrant process with a court. It's a big deal. You don't just. I mean, hospital, psychiatric hospital. You just show up. If you can get them to the hospital, they'll take care of that. You don't have to worry about that part. But that is one of those things that can be pursued. Um, Homicide, we're going to talk about from few slides. It's important to keep in mind things like I could just kill him. Uh, there's just common venting. I had a client actually say that to me one time, like I'm so mad I could just kill him. I was like, okay, kill him, huh? And they're like, yeah, just rah, rah, rah. They were venting. Later I checked it out before they left. I'm like, okay, we're cool. We're good. Tarasoff case, very controversial. We've already touched on that, talked about that quite a bit. In fact, yeah, we already talked about that quite a bit. I'm not going to talk about that more. I don't know if this is surprising to you. These statistics: 42% of the victims were killed. People are killed by people that they know. Children are molested by family members and friends and people that the family knows and trusts. Very, very high percentage, higher than this, I believe. So yeah, so people kill people that they know. Friends, family, acquaintances, coworkers. 38% of women are killed by their husband or their boyfriend. Like, oh boy, that's great, right? So, ladies, if you're married, you've got a 38% chance of your husband killing you. Uh, that was horrible. I'm so sorry. No, that's not really accurate, but it is an interesting statistic that of those women who are killed, murdered, right? Homicide. 38% of them were killed by their husband or their boyfriend. That's just wow. If that's not sin nature, sick world stuff, I don't know what is. Um, we look at assessing the risk of homicide very similarly to what we talked about in terms of assessing the risk of suicide, and we'll get into that in a little bit more. Some of the risk factors. This is not an all-inclusive list for youth. Is diagnosis, DX's diagnosis, by the way, diagnosis of conduct disorder. Um, Poverty conduct disorder is like they're bullying, they're abusive to people, they have very little conscience when they do you wrong or steal from you or cuss you out or lie to you or hit you. They oftentimes are violent towards others. They will often, another real key fact, common one here with conduct disorder is abuse of animals. So they'll abuse animals sometimes to the death. I know it's kind of sick, but nonetheless, there you go. Um, Poverty, where they come from a poor family. This is youth, remember, so if they live in a poor family. Peer delinquency, so not only are they delinquent, but they're hanging out with peers who are delinquent. Drug abuse of any kind, including alcohol, access to weapons. They oftentimes have been in the juvenile justice system. They have very low levels of parental supervision or poor parental supervision, and they oftentimes have mood disorders and anger management. The textbook divides this up between males and females. I didn't do a whole lot. I didn't do that obviously here, but you guys are following in the textbook and able to read that and get that. School violence, it really cannot perfectly be predicted. Obviously, we can't, short of the Holy Spirit opening our eyes to something, we're not going to be able to predict based on behaviors or thought patterns or thought processes. But it is helpful to remember that most perpetrators do communicate their intentions to somebody, right? So if students you go into a school and you speak and students understand that uh, that if it's communicated, they need to say something, that is helpful. So I don't want to belabor the point, but it is interesting that they communicate their intentions in some form or fashion. And so um, I don't think we have to be overly inflammatory in reaction to for every kid that says something stupid on Facebook about, I'm going to shoot somebody at the school. Well, I mean, we need to look into that. We really do. But we need to not like imprison them and take them off in cuffs immediately. I mean, it's like let's investigate. This is kind of a four-pronged investigation factors list. So look at the personality, the behavior, the traits. And it's funny because people are like, oh, it's that quiet kid that's really scary that blows up. And yeah, it is. And it's that loudmouth kid that's always popping off and has no control of his emotions too, right? So try not to like just, oh, well, they're jovial and laughing. They're the class clown. Sometimes the class clown is the kid that's the most hurting and jacked up kid in the school. So it's when I say personality test, I'm more thinking about a personality test. that would help reveal some sickness, and it would, like an MMPI-2. It's the 694 questions or whatever it is, insanely long. Certainly, behaviors can be observed, particular violent behaviors, and those kinds of things. All right, so family dynamics, looking at their family violence. Attitude towards violence, family stuff, family issues, problems at home, that's a factor. School dynamics, culture of the school, the climate, what are things like at the school, what's going on, is there a big brouhaha between different groups at the school, that kind of stuff, what's going on there. And then socially, is this kid, does he have friends? What's his peer, what are his peers like, he or she's peers like? And then what is the culture of the community? So those are the kind of four-pronged investigation, the things that we look at. Um, Bullying and social rejection are very high on the list, and that's found here with social dynamics number three and number four. Um, Kids that are bullied or socially rejected will come up to the school and start blowing people away. That's a pretty big deal, pretty high one. Pretty high percentage of kids who have done this have that going on. Uh, for steps of assessment for assessing the risk of homicide or violence in a school setting, identify the threat. So, in other words, somebody has heard something or seen something or found something on social media or written on a piece of paper in an assignment that happens sometimes. So you identify the threat, then you evaluate the seriousness, you gather information, you talk to the kid, in other words. You intervene or at level two, it could just be, okay, that's cool, we're good, it's explained, it's explained, and the kid's fine and understands, and you're good, and you might kind of keep an eye on them, you might follow up, but you're good. If there's questions left at that point, um, then it's time to get the law involved. Certainly, if you're a teacher at a school, you get the principal involved, and possible notification of victims. That gets into Tarasoff. We get that whole mental health assessment. This person may end up in the psychiatric hospital. I've had several people in the clients, patients in the hospital that were there because they were homicidal. Not a whole lot, but some. It's kind of interesting. And I mean, sweet little housewife. She's like, I am going to kill my husband. I'm like, really? And she's like, oh yeah, there's no question about it. I'm like, wow, okay, let's talk about that. That's kind of interesting. I was just like, woo, you're like, okay. Um, and then you want to have a safety plan and monitor that safety plan. You want to document everything, documentation, documentation, documentation. And oh, by the way, did I say documentation? And then you also want to make sure you follow up with that kid specifically and or with the family as well. So all right, workplace homicide. So that was school. Now we're in a workplace. Here are the categories that the FBI has created. Violence from criminals from outside. So in other words, a criminal comes to the workplace to do crime, right? To steal or to whatever, right? So there, it's just some random person comes up or planned, whatever. But it's not a relationship necessarily. Could be a customer, or a client, or a patient that's directed towards the workers. So they felt like they were wronged and couldn't get it resolved, so they come up there and they're ready to do violence. Could be violence against a supervisor or coworker from an employee or a former employee. So that's a biggie. Or it could be violence from an outside person who has a relationship with an employee. So in other words, um, some guy's wife works at the company and he's going to come up there and kill her right in front of everybody and leave. It's like, oh, that's another. And these are all. I mean, I'm sure statistically some are more common than other, but this is it. These are everything that happens violence in the workplace. The FBI is saying is it can be put into one of these four categories. And if you think about it logically, it's like, well, yeah, I see that. That makes sense, right? So level of assessment, you've got, oh, I love it. I love it when they said medium because I got my small, medium, and large. I don't know if you'll heard me say that, but I got this thing. I'm like, okay, talk to me. How is this? Like small, medium, or large? This is a big deal to you? Small deal to you, medium deal to you. Small, medium, or large. I do that sometimes. It's kind of cute, kind of fun. People are like, kind of, okay, medium. Okay, so what does medium mean to you? Sometimes I'll do a 1 to 10. So low level, it's a very vague threat. They talk about it and it's kind of inconsistent and it's not maybe very realistic. It just doesn't. You're listening to it thinking this is not likely. It's not really something that can be done, or it's not likely that it's going to be done. Sometimes it's super elaborate and bizarre. It's like something they saw in a movie or on a video game or something, and it's like, yeah, probably not. Medium, the threat is a little more direct, a little more specific, a little more concrete. There's some thought behind it. It's like, okay, this person's thought about this. There's some planning maybe going on. There's some kind of an indication of, although not necessarily specific, this is not a detailed plan, but an indication of a time or a place, and possibly you feel like maybe there's been some preparatory work done. Just by listening to them, you just pick up on this, right? Again, we're little investigators. And if it's a high level of threat, then we're looking at very direct, very specific, very plausible, concrete steps have been taken. Whatever has been acquired, practiced, weapon, plan, bomb, done, working it in process, victim under surveillance, and victim under surveillance. What does that sound like? What does that look like? Guy's mad at his boss and he says that blankety blank blank better watch herself. Victim under some, I got my eyes on her. I got my eyes on you, buddy. Like, oh, that's bad. You hear that, you're like, ooh, yeah, this guy's not stable. This is not good. Um, Survivor needs. We are people when there is a homicide. Counselors come in. We encourage people to go to counseling. Sometimes it's underutilized. You can go into a workplace where there's been a violent act. People are like, I ain't want to talk to the counselor. People think I'm weird. Like, okay, whatever, right? So it's just, sometimes it's strongly encouraged. Sometimes a lot of the leadership sometimes rolls their eyes and goes, okay, whatever. We have to bring these counselors in, and we're going to put them in a room. And Todd Linder, one of my best friends, you hear me talk about him from time to time, 35-year best friends. Um, he does this, and it's like, okay, we're going to put you up in this conference room, and he's in some high-rise building somewhere, or in Bubba's mechanic shop or whatever. No offense to anybody on that. Sorry, I got a lot of Bubba in me, but and whatever the setting, and he sits there, and sometimes he sits there for 3 hours, and he gets paid bukus of bucks to sit there for 3 hours, and nobody comes to talk to him. Other times, but tons of people come talk to him. So it's kind of an interesting deal. But you have to have availability to help people out if you're a company or organization. The people's grief is compounded by the investigations itself. If you were in the building, if you were close, if you knew the person you're going to be talked to, do you know anybody that didn't like this person? Did you see, what did you see, and all this stuff, right? You may even end up in court, depending on how close you are to them or how close you physically were to the scene of the crime. That would put you in the middle of it, having to go to court and testify oftentimes, and that's tough. You're trying to grieve the loss of this situation, and also the intensity of the person's grief is going to be measured by several things. How physically close were you when you were there? How much physical danger did you perceive yourself to be in? Perceive yourself to be in, not how much danger were they in. That's a very different thing, right? Because you may look at it and go, but you weren't in any danger at all, period, ever. Not even close, not even almost. Well, first of all, don't ever say that to somebody. Second of all, how would you really know that? Okay, so the person came in and killed that person and left. Well, how do you know that they didn't originally plan to kill a bunch of other people and change their mind in the process? And whatever, right? So how close are they physically, literally physically close to the crime scene, to what happened? Did they see it happen? Did they see blood? Is there blood and guts and gore? So the greater level of violence witnessed, the more traumatized they are, the more difficult it is for them to deal with it. And then that we have this term called complicated grief, and the textbook goes through the details of the symptoms of complicated grief. It's very simply put, it's like being stuck. in your grieving process. So how do you intervene? Here are 5 guidelines for intervening. It's not all-consuming, all whatever. And by the way, as you're reading through this, you're going to be like, well, wait, he didn't cover this and this. Exactly. This is a long chapter, and I'm just covering a few things. You want to build that relationship and make sure that rapport that you build with them, that they feel safe, they can say anything they need to say. They just let them talk, let them vent. Encourage them to vent. That's them jumping into number 2, right? So have them tell you about it. Tell you what they know. As they review the details and as they process it, they're processing. It helps them kind of clarify it in their mind. It makes it not as big, bad, and scary once they get it out, although it may be really ugly. Um, was there, talk to them about, was there any other kinds of conditions going on? Was this person psychotic or just super crazy? Were they screaming out crazy things as they were doing it? Were they high? Those kinds of things, and that changes things, right? A little bit. Normalize and reframe feelings. Normalize. It's normal for you to feel. I mean, you literally can say that. You know what you're feeling? You're scared, or you're whatever. You're angry. You're hurt. You're freaked out. You're traumatized. You're in shock. All these are very normal. It's okay to feel this way. In other words, you give them permission, so to speak, emotionally speaking. Um, Encourage them to go to a support group as well as be in counseling. That, my friends, is the last slide. Hallelujah. All right. Goodbye. Good night. God bless. Good evening. Good morning. Whatever it is for you. And I'll see you all on the next video. Thank you for watching.